Return of Apophis, the Apocalypse Asteroid Wormwood, and Wrath of Set. How's it going, you wandering stars? In today's video, we'll be looking at Apophis, the alleged asteroid on its way for Earth, on Friday the 13th, April 2029, and examine the magic esoteric connections to the deities surrounding these apocalyptic events. Will it just be another close call, a devastating impact, or a herald of the apocalypse? Let's find out. Back in 2004, on June 19th, a near-Earth asteroid was discovered, named 99942 Apophis. Although the stats vary depending on the source, it has approximately a mass of 26.99 billion kilograms and a radius of 606.96 feet, a diameter of 370 meters. And mainstream scientists were worried it could hit Earth, but said it's a 2.7% chance of impact. However, it may pass so close it knocks out a few satellites, as they say it will be 19,000 miles or 31,000 kilometers above Earth. They say the brightness of Apophis will be like stars of the Little Dipper when it gets close and is traveling in an orbit of 30.728 kilometers a second, which is approximately 68,736 miles per hour. To put in perspective, the size of Apophis is 1,100 feet wide. That's only 150 feet shorter than the Empire State Building's height, located in New York City, or comparative to over 3 American football fields in length before this asteroid's width. Originally, it was thought that the close flyby could change Apophis' orbit, causing more concern when it comes back in 2036, but they eventually ruled out those concerns. Peculiarly, this asteroid is named after the Egyptian god of chaos, Apophis. We'll explore this topic more later in this video. However, some believe there's a cover-up going on to keep the general public from realizing the true threat Apophis brings. One of the main proponents advocating this is Thomas Horn, a best-selling author, lecturer, and radio host who pushes a Christian end-time perspective. He thinks this asteroid could be the Wormwood, spoken of in Revelations. He predicts that it will hit the Earth on Friday the 13th, April 2029. He claims to have been shown a vision by God, seeing dragon-like imagery, flying through space, moving as a fiery serpent, and then realized it was an asteroid coming towards Earth, which hit the oceans and other parts hitting the land, triggering mass destruction and chaos from tsunamis to volcano eruptions, etc. When he awoke from his terrifying dream, he went to jot down notes of what transpired and heard the word Apophis. Although prior to this dream he didn't know of Egyptian god Apophis because of his background knowledge of mythology, and knew there was an asteroid discovered by NASA by name, but not much beyond that. He says after doing research, realized what it was and how a meteor impact would match the devastation seen in dream. Some take his prediction seriously because he predicted in a previous book that Pope Benedict XVI would step down, which did technically happen even though the public timeline wasn't initially revealed to be a match but later confirmed. He thinks the formation of Trump's Space Force is to monitor and handle the threat of Apophis. He also claims to have contacts within NASA who have above top secret clearance and allies within the Pentagon. From his conversation, he believes it's a massive cover-up going on with Apophis and thinks that this is tied to the wormwood mentioned in Revelations chapter 8 verse 10 through 11. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it were upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountain of the waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters, because they were made bitter. I'll come back to the scripture later when we do a deep dive, but I want to insert it here briefly for those not familiar or as a refresher. Thomas Horn claims scientists say if it did hit the Earth, It would be around the border of California and Mexico. Its impact would be equivalent to 880 million tons of TNT being detonated, approximately 65,000 times more powerful than the nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima. In 2025, people will be able to see Apophis approach with their home telescopes, and in 2027 it will be seen by the naked eye. He thinks that when there will be mass chaos once this happens, so the system is trying to cover it up in order to prevent panic, and while they try to see if it can be stopped, also feels these events are ramping up to the reveal of the Antichrist, events of tribulation, the greatest revival of Christianity, and the return of Jesus. This author isn't new to me, and I've been aware of previous work and Pope claims when it happened. While there's a good and interesting information, it's always overshadowed by a biblical agenda. I have read his book, The Wormwood Prophecy. It's okay, but mainly, unfortunately, focuses on a Christian fear-based propaganda, encouraging the reader their only hope is to pray to his biblical God and Jesus. Also, he doesn't have the same confidence in the book's writing tone as displayed in an interview on Sid Roth, It's Supernatural, or other Christian programming. Overall, it's okay, but uses too much appeal to authority and bias in regards to Wormwood interpretation. However, this isn't a book review, but I want to touch on it briefly, since plenty of hype or fear is being generated from this. Keep in mind, during the interview he states how he and Sid Roth both have friends around the president who are prophecy believers, and that Trump's Space Force has a new King James Bible that every commanding officer must be sworn in on. Sounds suspicious to me, and some may see where I'm going with this later on. To offer an opposing view, I'll break down Wormwood, Apophis, the star of the apocalypse, and Abaddon/Apollyon from a neutral, unbiased point of view, as well as a left-hand path perspective to counter the Judeo-Christian dogma, although I'll try not to fall into the same pitfalls, also while presenting what conspiracy could actually be going on, and what we really can do to be prepared. Apophis, or Apep, from a supernatural or mythological point of view, is a god of Egypt. It was the god of destruction, darkness, storms, chaos, an arch nemesis to the sun god Ra. This deity was a giant primeval serpent said to do battle with Ra and the other gods constantly, as he seeked to swallow the sun, return the world back to darkness and chaos. Many of the gods would team up to battle with Apophis and defeat him, but would always regenerate and come back, even when people would offer prayers or perform rituals to help the gods in their battle against him. But all efforts were futile in permanently defeating this great serpent. While there are many serpent-like demons and entities from ancient times which could have been Apophis, specific details in its name isn't mentioned until the New Kingdom timeline. Alternate origins range from being born from the creator god Neith, spitting it out. In some accounts, Apophis does battle with the Egyptian god Set. It was said that only he could resist the great serpent, as Ra would get hypnotized, and he'd boast how only he could do it, and wanted recognition for these feats. Eventually Ra got tired of it and brought on the other gods for help with the sun built against Apophis instead. In other legends, Apophis and Set are one and the same. Set is also associated with the serpent imagery in being a god of chaos, storms, earthquake, destructions, drought, famine, war, etc. Greeks associate with Typhoon, a great multi-headed dragon, although he wasn't always viewed as a villain to mainstream Egypt until much later, after they say the Ma'at of Harmony or of Osiris and Isis was thrown off by him wanting to rule and killing his brother Osiris because Nephthys had sex with him, who would later birth Anubis. While there are many versions of how Set defeats Osiris, one where Set has 72 accomplices. Could this be a goetic tie? And others where he does it solo. In short, Set gets revenge by tricking and trapping Osiris into a chest/coffin and then tossing him in the Nile. At some point, Osiris's body gets cut into pieces. Isis and Nephthys retrieve him, but his phallus is eaten by a fish. Although he's dead through magic, Isis impregnates herself using his separated member, which eventually bears young Horus. Set is said to rule over the deserts and foreign places outside of Egypt. Descriptions say he has red hair, white or fair skin. Those with similar features were associated or related to him. Some describe him as a red-haired beast with hooves. Scholars link the imagery and themes of Set to Satan, the devil, in Christian mythology, while they incorporated the stories into their lore. While we could take all day going over the various stories, details, versions, and legends around Set and his conflicts with the gods on the events when the decision needs to be made who will rule Egypt, the gods go to the oldest one, Neith, who is an Egyptian creation goddess associated with bringing forth the other gods. She's an androgynous being and is associated with snake, serpent, reptilian imagery, said to be the mother of Sobek, a crocodile deity. Some depictions show her breastfeeding a crocodile on each breast, a deity of the hunt, weaving, creation of the world, witchcraft and war in later times. Greeks compared her to Athena, although with hunting, bow, and archery links, that version could be similar to Artemis. More on that later. Anyways, Neith decides that the Horus, who is the son of Isis, would rule Egypt and Seth the desert and foreign lands, and it's suggested he gets paired with the foreign goddess Anat and Astarte to compensate for it. The interesting thing with that is both Astarte and Anat are associated with being the queen of heaven. She is a goddess of fertility, conceiving womb. Some link to a title of Anat, which is a Canaanite deity, linked to Baal, who threatens El in favor of Baal. Other accounts link Anat and Astarte as sisters or separate entities, while the name can be tied back to Asherah, who was another ancient form, where various accounts link to a consort of El, Anu, Baal, etc., even known as a virgin goddess, still despite being paired or pregnant to the others. Later on, Astarte is demonized and gender swapped into a demon, Astaroth, by the Christians, who is a demon of Goetia. Also, imagery of her described falling to earth like a fiery star. Links can be made to Ishtar, Inanna, and Aphrodite, even similarities to Neith, which would make the Egyptian story even more interesting and complicated. However, it's clear that Astarte is a powerful goddess of the stars. Etymological ties even reveal this connection from the Greek word aster, which we get star from, linking to deities, Astrea, and more. To fully break it down would go outside the scope of this project, so I'll save it for another day, as it's tied to another project I'm working on. Although what's important for the context of this video is that Astarte is a powerful deity who holds domain over the stars and night sky. Many cultures and false groups who came after tried to lessen her position or attribute patriarchal features by making her the wife to the gods or putting her under them in other ways. Like all of these accounts of deities, there is much conjecture and confusion in the history books. I'm sure many are filled with propaganda and misinformation, but using our discernment while investigating clear connections can help reveal the truth. However, nothing can compare to working with these entities directly to gain gnosis. Let me know in the comments below your theories and connections. Can you hear the call? May the light of liberation shine upon you. Moving back to the topic of Wormwood, which is theorized to be an asteroid or great star that falls from heaven, and the claims that Trump's Space Force are preparing for it, or it will fulfill the prophecies of Revelation for Christians. We know the majority of the world is influenced or ruled by the Abrahamic faiths, and almost all religions that focuses on taking away your personal power or making one complacent is nothing but mind control. Only the luciferic dragonic currents inspire one to apotheosis, rising above the confines which try to limit us. Focusing back on the Western world or American government, we can see what deity and allegiance they serve with their agendas. Only one has to look at the Washington Monument obelisk in DC to see it. Some associate the obelisk with Osiris, as it is a phallic-like memorial. We can see this imagery in DC, London, and the Vatican. Could this be revealing who they really serve? Although there are much more clues, another video perhaps. I'll refrain from getting too conspiracy crazy for the sake of not derailing this video, but we'll touch on something interesting briefly. For some who examine reality may be familiar with a tactic those who try to manipulate this world called predictive programming, which is where messages, symbols, plans, etc. is placed in various forms of pop culture and entertainment. This is used as either a lesser form of magic to help manifest or condition masses for what's to come, or perhaps some type of universal balancing act to reveal their plan in plain sight to mitigate negative energetic backlash. However, on the other hand, in some situations it could just be artists tapping into potential futures, or maybe both. Regardless of the reason why certain events are predicted in entertainment, there's clearly a tie. While it's outside the scope of this video, a brief example would be events like 9/11, Trump's presidency shown in Simpsons before it happened, the Illuminati card game, also current pandemic symbolism being shown in the 2012 Olympics opening ceremony. Some other prominent chilling predictive programming could be found in 1984, Brave New World, Soylent Green, Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. I know all this sounds completely insane, but if you start to investigate the signs and symbols and how this reality works for those who try to manipulate things in certain positions of power, you'll start to see the thread. But that's outside the scope of this video by giving those brief examples, just so you'll see why I'm mentioning what I'm about to. If you want me to cover predictive programming in the future, let me know, although I refrain from doing too heavily conspiracy things nowadays. But if you want to see predictive programming regarding virtual reality, I have made a video about that. So it may be of interest that Final Fantasy VII Remake came out this year, which events could parallel what's happening today with environmental concerns, with a group taking on the government/corporations who are harming the planet by implementing their tech and an inbound asteroid. This could link to 5G and Apophis. Also, upcoming movie Greenland starring Gerard Butler, which is about a family trying to escape to a safe bunker to avoid meteor threats, which was a personal synchronistic reveal regarding a safe location. Or going to anime classic Dragon Ball Z movie Lord Slug, which there's an end-of-the-world asteroid heading to Earth, but it's actually a cloaked alien ship ruled by an ancient dragon-like entity. Or movies like Deep Impact. I could go on all day. Even many years ago I was told on one of my first talking board experiences that an asteroid would hit Utah. I'm not claiming this to be a direct prophecy, as it wasn't like other prophetic experiences I've had. Also, regardless of prophecies, the future can always be altered if one is a master of their own fate. Now moving back to the main topic of the video. When it comes to their control tactics, they like to give an illusion of choice, make order from chaos, or provide a problem to engineer a certain reaction when then they give a solution they want one to take. When one dives deep into analyzing politics, one realizes it's a rigged system. Democratic, Republican, etc. is irrelevant. Right wing, left wing, it's a part of the same bird. The Bible is the perfect New World Order control brainwashed. The word government, on an etymological perspective, even means to govern the mind, which is mind control, as the masses put government in a parental or godly role in their lives. From a biblical perspective, they will have people fearing the Antichrist. just to get them under a one world government with their god at the top and them subservient, with the whole event as an orchestrated scam. They could be using the Bible as a handbook to try and use it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Again, this is another avenue outside this video, but perhaps we'll touch on it in the future. I'll just say it's easy to see the corruption of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, etc. when examining their end goal agenda. So getting off of that tangent and back to the conspiracy of Wormwood, maybe an actual asteroid or star will fall, or perhaps a weapon of mass destruction could be detonated to trick the population that one has fallen as they push their New World Order agenda and self-engineered revelation-inspired plans. These people are the enemy of the serpent and dragon. We can see how the imagery is always demonized. Even the origin of that word will reveal to you the truth. Now remember when I mentioned Artemis earlier? Well, when we look at the root word and etymology behind the bitter plant wormwood, we get Artemisia Absinthium. The naming of the plant stems from the Greek queen Artemisia, but going further back, its name comes from Artemis, who is a Greek goddess, twin sister to Apollon. Some of their traits attribute them to bringing sudden death and disease. Keep in mind, in the book of Revelation, when wormwood falls into the water, it makes it bitter and kills many. Then after we see another star fall, which unlocks the abyss. Could this be talking about the same two deities return, or launching their armaments being asteroids in a cosmic war? Let's examine an excerpt.
Revelation chapter 8. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and was it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea had life, and in the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and on the fountains of the waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters, because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them were darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. Chapter 9. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of the great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion, which he striketh a man. And in those days shall man seek death, and they shall not find it, and they shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared into battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was the sound of chariots, of many horses running to battle, and they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and the power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. As we can see in those verses, these fallen stars correlate to angels, and they bring destruction during these events of Revelation. It's no secret Christianity has stolen many concepts, themes from other faiths and mythologies to twist for their agenda, which can add to the confusion of what the truth behind the scriptures mean. If we continue reading Revelation, especially chapter 12, KJV, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God, and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now we see the appearance of a great dragon, who has multiple heads, a pregnant woman, with a special child, and a cosmic war between them and their factions. We have come full circle with a tale similar to the ancient stories, but bastardized almost beyond recognition. The events are either out of order and or parallel early creation stories, but masked into their hopeful conclusion story. However, to examine it thoroughly from a mythological, spiritual, and potentially prophetic perspective will have to be saved for another day. Perhaps, since we see the grand apocalypse unveiling has already commenced, the system fears the return of these draconic, luciferic forces rising up, so they want to mitigate, hijack, and hide this to the best of their ability, but will inevitably be thwarted, for the dragon is immortal and rises again.